Hello, hello. Welcome to, I can't even remember our group's name. We are the Music Nerds Collective. We meet and talk about music live for anyone's entertainment on the internet. And my compatriots can fill you in on the exact details to talk about subjects that we run through our group, which actually numbers 7. On many times, and we each pick a subject and then we discuss it in great detail, and with lots of love and passion and enthusiasm. I'm going to let y'all introduce yourselves. I'm Joe Guinness. I live in New City, Clarkstown, Rockland County, New York, the lowest of the low in the Hudson Valley. Hello. Scott, tell us about yourself.
I'm Scott Greenberg, and I ran on the mean streets of suburban Detroit with Joe and Andy back in the 80s. I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina, where, among other things, I host the Debts No Honest Man Can Pay podcast. Popcorn over to Andy.
Sunfrog Andrew Smith, also known as Teacher on the Radio. And in the mid-'80s, I was doing the United Underground show on WSHJ, where Greenberg and Joe also worked. And this week, I just produced my next episode, which is the 40th anniversary of the United Underground. I just played an old cassette, literally just like an old, very squeaky cassette of my 18-year-old voice, taped off the radio by a friend. Anyway, so I've been doing Teacher on the Radio for almost 19 years. I'm at about 522 episodes, which actually, if you do the math, means I'm actually quite lazy. I don't do that many episodes a year, or I'd be about 2,000 episodes in, I think, at this point. So, and I'm in Cookeville, Tennessee, which is in the Upper Cumberland region. I moved to Tennessee in the 90s, and I've been here ever since. And I'm excited to talk about the king of rock and roll.
Rick, what can you tell us about yourself?
Or
say anything you want about anything.
Well, that's a dangerous opening. Rick Quinn from Nashville, Tennessee. I am glad to be part of this Music Nerds Collaborative. I have was brought in by my dear friend Andrew, who I met some years ago in Memphis, Tennessee, where the king lived and worked. We bonded over music, over this band behind me, and many other things. So he helped usher me into music and pop cultural journalism with our zine for a while, Ordinary Space. I've done some stuff for Pop Matters, and I am just excited to talk about the king this evening. But I'll stop there and turn it over to Mark.
My name's Mark Creeder. People who regularly listen probably know my son, Gus Creeder. He preceded me on this show. I don't think he's joining us tonight, but Andy and I have been friends for a very long time in Cookeville. I'm originally from New Jersey, born and raised. It was funny, you were talking about being in the 80s. I guess, let's see, in the 80s, I was in Virginia at Lynchburg College in Virginia. But I'm a theater guy, but I love music. And I'm super happy to talk about Elvis tonight because, among other reasons, the theater company that I'm a co-founder of, the Tennessee Stage Company, which is a theater company in Knoxville, Tennessee, that I was a co-founder of back in 1989. At the time, our slogan was "Elvis is our co-pilot," and one of my partners in the company had a big, beautiful picture of Elvis hanging on the wall. So Elvis has been a part of my life for a very long time.
Awesome. So yeah, let's talk about Elvis. I wanted to start by talking about how I have 3 formative Elvis moments in my life, and they're not as a small child. The first one happened in August 1977, which was his death. My family was at we were on a family vacation in in a city called East Taos, in these little bungalows right on Lake Huron on the Sunrise side of the lake. And I just remember I'd listen to a lot of the radio while we were on these vacations up there. And I remember that Elvis died the week we were up there. And that was how huge his death was sort of the first impact on Elvis, because we were not really an Elvis family. You know, I've talked about my mom's, you know, the Neil Diamond, Barbra Streisand. So, but Elvis didn't even come close to that. The closest we got probably was Neil Diamond, the Jewish Elvis. So his death was the first thing. The second two happened right around the same time, I think, in 1989. And the first one was Public Enemy's song that came out, and Do the Right Thing, Fight the Power. And Fight the Power had these lyrics that really struck me hard. Elvis was a hero to most, but he never meant shit to me, you see. Straight up racist that sucker was. Simple and plain. And then there's my notes cut off, but there's something compared saying him and John Wayne. And you know, that song is really about cultural appropriation and you know, fighting back against the musical structure that won't allow people to be creative. It might be about a number of things, but it's that. So he struck out at Elvis as the example of that. And in later years, he said Elvis was just who he chose to illustrate his point. At that point, he knew more about Elvis, and we'll talk about that. But that was a huge had a huge impact on me, and I remember hearing that in the song and being like, "Yeah, right," you know. So death, racist, and then I moved in with a couple of men, Sean Berry and Josh Sparbeck, and it turns out we all had little Elvis kitsch. You know, Elvis was, you know, we all knew him growing up as this kitschmeister with this cottage industry surrounding his corpse, you know, which is the really the brilliant handiwork of Colonel Tom Parker. But we put together this Elvis shrine, and all of us were music lovers. We weren't listening to Elvis. You know, it's I don't want to say it's shameful, but we were there for all the wrong reasons, you know, that young people have for doing what was sort of a cool display. You know, we had a big Elvis tapestry. We had an AM radio that was an Elvis figurine. You know, you put a 9-volt in there. You know, it was just funny that we had all this stuff, and that the three of us connected. You know, it wasn't a huge collection, but some critical mass so we could put together our Elvis shrine. People liked it. It looked cool. And but it was never about the music. And the thing, I probably should express this as my conclusion about Elvis, is that everything comes down to his music. Like all that you know about him or don't know, it's not the movies, which were terrible, not the Vegas camp, not the karate, which he was pretty damn good at, and certainly not the way he treated the women and girls he got involved with. And there were many, and one after the other. And he certainly was a groomer, though he wasn't really. He was a groomer, but not really a sexual predator. He just had some impossible ideal based on his mother and, you know, some other critters. He had a huge appetite, you know, whatever it was for. He had a huge appetite for sex and food and money and pills. Elvis was a walking PDR. He actually loved to read the PDR and learn all about drugs and interactions and sicknesses. You know, he was not really a hypochondriac, but he you know, like a lot of things about Elvis that we didn't really reckon unless you read up on him, is that he was a smart guy who liked to read. He wasn't a simple hayseed redneck, though he kind of was. You know, he is when he evolved. He started out with tools that he never got to sharpen because he was, you know, from the poor side of town. He had a dad who was sort of work resistant, and you know, a mother who, you know, worked herself to the bone and loved him more than you know. I mean, the love they felt between each other was epic, just like the concert film. You know, Elvis had a twin. That's a story that died at birth. Jesse Garin, and that left essentially I got some little notes here. It left a bowling ball sized hole in his soul that he was continually trying to fill. And the more famous he got, the bigger that hole grew. No one more successful has ever been less equipped for that level of success. One day he's driving a truck, a somewhat aspirational white trash high school grad. And then overnight, he was a star. It was almost literally overnight. He went in, cut this track. It's got handed over to this DJ, and he went bananas for it, kept playing it over and over again. And from there, he was shot out of a cannon. And I don't know, no one was ever less equipped for that level of stardom. And along with that, he believed his every dream had come true and kept coming true. And they came true as fast as he could conjure them. And then, you know, of course, it all caught up with him. I want to talk about a couple of things that I thought are important in Elvis's life, and I'm just going to gloss over Colonel Tom because that's just such another ocean, their relationship. It's brilliant and fascinating, and Colonel Tom is sort of an epic character of his own creation, who I don't know. Yeah, Peter Guralnick, who wrote the definitive Elvis biographies, wrote sort of a companion piece, including all the basically some repurposing all his Colonel Tom interviews and all the Colonel Tom material he couldn't use into a short biography of him, which is also pretty brilliant. But well, I spent a long time talking about the guy I was just going to skip over. I did want to, before I pass this on, I wanted to talk about Elvis in the military. I don't know anybody who in public life like that, any sort of star athlete other than Ted Williams, really, and a lot of the baseball players and athletes who gave up their careers for a few years. But Elvis in pop, rock and roll, whatever he was doing at the time, was the hugest star on the planet, or at least in America. And then he got drafted. And he could have easily gotten out. You know, that was not unusual, I think, for people of his stature to just find a way out and do some USO shows and move on. But he went because he believed in America and he didn't want to be different. He was the same person he was born as. Even though this whole shitstorm enveloped around his success, he always kind of remained true to his brilliant, warped self. Which was a love, and which was, you know, and a music that was rooted in love and respect and passion. Like he was an artist, you know. I listened to that playlist I put together based on Guralnick's playlist at the end of the second book, which is like 10 pages long, but this is the essence of them. And I listened to it a bunch, and then I hadn't listened to it for a while. And today I put it on, and it's pure. Like, that music is great. You know, this is something I never reckoned with when I was making fun of him or considering him a racist, which he wasn't. We could spend an hour on that. Is that the music is amazing. You know, it's there's like 24, 25 songs, and it's one after the other, an amazing string of beautiful pop hits, great drumming, great guitar playing, just like beautiful trio music that rocked the bejesus out of you. Anyway, who wants to go next? Anybody have any questions? Scott.
So first and foremost, thank you for bringing this to us, because I probably would never have done the homework if you hadn't assigned it. Your 90s Elvis shrine was totally appropriate because everything was overly ironic in the 90s, but you get extra points for realizing in retrospect that you were wrong. Aside from just a general abiding respect for everything that he did, I never really took the time to take a deep dive into Elvis. I listened to the playlist once. Shame on me. But I enjoyed it because it was a deep dive. It explored areas I wasn't aware of, especially, the soul and the gospel. Watching the movie was a revelation, because Baz Luhrmann, your mileage can vary with him, but I liked his approach. I liked that he kind of bookended it as a documentary and didn't make it a straight concert film. And I like that he wove performances from one day with another day, but it was all in Las Vegas. And before this, my idea of Elvis in Vegas was, he was overweight, he was schlubby, he was druggy, and he wasn't any of those things. And it made me sad towards the end when he revealed that he had never played overseas, he never played in New York, and there was that image that really just reverberated with me at the very end, where he's in the elevator and the doors close and he's just soaked with sweat, and the chyron goes on and says he played from 1969 to 1975. I forget the dates, but often 3 shows in a row. And I'm like, no wonder he went out the way that he did. Nobody can sustain that. I'm like, even Springsteen got to the point where he's like, I need to work out if I'm going to do one 3 to 4 hour show a day. But Elvis did that 3 times, and Elvis was the template. I'm like, there would be no Bruce. Can we say that there would be no James Brown without Elvis, or are they 2 separate entities? But as I was watching, I'm like, okay, there's very few people who really just created that template. I'm like, Elvis and James Brown come to mind. I'm like, yeah, Bruce, Bono, whoever, Taylor Swift, but I think they all kind of got it from Elvis. It was cool to see that piece of it. It was cool to see him be like in the rehearsal scenes. It was cool to see him be fun and funny. There was that one scene where they're on stage and he kind of just, in a playful moment, just kind of like, does like, kind of moment with one of the singers, and she jumps and he has a laugh. And it was kind of cool to see that side of him, because he's usually in this gauzy aura of like, he's, the king. And it was cool to see some human moments with him. And I'm glad you shared the moment of when you heard the news of Elvis's passing, because it was summer camp. I was in summer camp, and Elvis and Groucho Marx died the same week. Groucho passed first, and Groucho, or more appropriately, Groucho via Hawkeye Pierce, was like a huge influence on my sense of humor. And I was bummed out that Groucho Marx died. And there was like that little kid part of me that's like, no fair, Elvis upstaged Groucho. But in retrospect, it's like, I get it. I'm glad I went to see that movie. That really kind of tied it all together for me. I have a greater appreciation of Elvis than I previously had. So thank you for that, Joe.
You're welcome. I do. So the homework for this episode, our listening audience and viewing audience, was to go see Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert, which is a movie that uses archival, mostly never seen before footage from his Vegas residency, which went on for years and years, like 3 weeks here, 3 weeks there, 2 weeks there. A lot of people said that he was doing all those gigs because Colonel Tom had a huge gambling debt, but they all like to make money. He and Colonel Tom share that. And anyway, Epic was put together by Baz Luhrmann, who also made an Elvis biopic. I'm not a Baz Luhrmann fan, but I thought he did really well with capturing the essence of Elvis. The other point I wanted to add, Scott, was that there was periods during his late Elvis residency where he was so full of pills and self-loathing that he loathed even his audience, because why would they be there for him? But he went through this whole series, but most of his work was pretty brilliant. some of it was thrown away. But he was a guy going through some epic psychological conflict that would never be remotely treated except with pills and peanut butter and banana sandwiches. Anyway,
Coca-Cola salad.
Who's got next?
What about the? I'm sorry.
Go
What
ahead.
about those scenes where he's just walking through the audience and kissing all the women, and like he's there for several minutes, and going, "Is this the end of the show?" It's like, no, he's stopping his own show to kiss women. That was so bizarre.
He really, I mean, I'm not making a sexual reference here, but he really was devoted to making his fans feel good. Like there was a mutual love there that he tried to return. He would hang out at the gates of Graceland. He'd go visit with them. He'd go out often every day when he was there just to say hello and chit chat and pick up young women, as one of the comments on a Facebook post. I don't know if that was yours, Rick, but one of your friends said a friend of hers was picked up by Elvis at the Graceland gate. So he did all that. He loved us, but it was love, Anyway, who's next?
I guess we can go around the room if that's okay, around the little circle here. So first of all, when I went to Memphis for Elvis Day about 15 years ago with Jeannie, I don't know why we didn't go into Graceland. We just went to all the shops in the kind of Graceland adjacent area. And then I dragged her to Graceland 2. That's Graceland TOO, and which is a fan shrine in I guess it's in northern Mississippi, I believe it is. The man is now dead. As a matter of fact, he was shot in his own doorway. But apparently he was really crazy. When we spent time with him, he was extremely crazy. And he didn't really ever leave the house. And I think at the time we were there, the law enforcement took pity on him and brought him pizzas and Cokes, which is what he wanted. I think he lived on pizza and Cokes. But he had this TV room where he had a lot of VHS tapes. And for years, he had tried to record directly off the TV every single time that Elvis was going to be on TV. And so he had this huge wall of VHS tapes, and he would play them on this TV. And it basically was a fan-built museum for Elvis. And he just had an enormous amount of memorabilia and all kinds of amazing stuff. And he was nice and he was cool in a way, but he was also kind of disturbing in a way too. But it was definitely like the whole like fandom thing really starts in a way with Elvis and the Beatles. And when we had a Peaches record store in the mall in Cleveland, and I remember going when I was in like third grade or so and having just like enough dollars to buy one record. And it was probably going to be like a $5 vinyl I could buy with my allowance or whatever it was. And I remember choosing an Elvis record. And somewhere I think I still have the Elvis record. And I'm pretty sure it is from the Imperial Hotels shows. So I think when I'm going off of what Scott said, I think one thing that's very, very clear to me is I had as a 9-year-old, I had a very distorted opinion on what constituted old, because I was sure Elvis was old. If Elvis was anything, he was definitely old. Nope. He looked great. He was very young. And I definitely had bought into this myth that Elvis went to Vegas to die, to be fat, to be addicted, to be falling down, and I guess Joe's saying there are some times that he had a really bad day or was really contentious or very kind of aggressively not okay. But what we saw in that film was a man at the peak of his powers, as though he had never lost his powers. I find, and also, I'm sure Mark will talk about this too, but I just thought the print was so beautiful. And like the audio, they did a really good job in terms of mastering the way it looked. The color was just so vibrant. Somebody showed me a picture, a meme that showed like the 70s versus today, just in terms of automobiles. And automobiles were all really, really colorful in the 70s, and now they're all very basic and very bland colors. And I think we'd somehow forgotten, just how Technicolor the 60s and the 70s were, and just how bright and how Just, what a to quote the Grateful Dead, what a sunshine daydream it all really was. And that Elvis, what Scott was talking about, I mean, the charisma and the sex appeal, and it was just it seemed so innocent, even though it was kind of like slimy at the same time. It seems so innocent, just him literally like walking around the floor, making out with people, either at set break or before the show. The way that Lerman cut the film, I thought was also excellent, because we don't really know which show it is or what time it is, and there's no talking heads. It's more like cinema verite or whatever. It's just, you're just flying through that time period, with as though you were there. The way it's shot, because it's eliminated the documentary narrator. There's no Peter Coyote narrating it like it was a Ken Burns film or something like that. It's just very in your face. I also really like that Elvis, to me, embodies what we call the American Songbook. Certainly, the Dead touch on this. In a weird way, Dylan does, even though Dylan is mostly, originals. But the way that Elvis sang all of the music, like almost out of like a hymnal, that was a mixture of like, sex, but it also had all this religion in it and all this kind of like civic, very like lowbrow patriotism, just to feel good. I mean, this is that lost after and sought after thing that doesn't really exist, but when people are talking about some romanticized America, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about the world where Elvis is all the things. Elvis is all things to all people. And, I've always been taught, don't try to be all things to all people. But Elvis definitely was all things to all people. And I think that in a very, I just couldn't believe how innocent it felt. Because given how tawdry, in a way, it's from what Joe was saying, with all these other elements of finance and lust and, a ravenous kind of appetite of an addict, it just all felt very, very innocent to me. And in that way, that I the kind of nostalgia that I would normally have at least a little bit of an eye roll for. I had no cynicism. I watched this film with like no cynicism whatsoever, and I felt so good after I watched it. I left the theater just like I just gotten a big hug from the king himself. So I'm grateful for Joe for prompting us. And I mean, I definitely like the parts of that period that I really like kind of get into is like, just the corniest "Oh Happy Day," or I don't think it's on this mix or it was even in the movie, but there's a version of him, from this period singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And it's just so, I don't know, it just gets me all up in my feels, and makes me think of, Jimmy Carter, just, I was 9, and I thought the bicentennial was the coolest thing ever. And now I'm, 50 years later, I don't feel cool anymore about any of it. And it's so funny because I feel like people not like us are supposed to be the ones peddling all the nostalgia, but I find myself like having nostalgia for the way it actually was, as opposed to this, made up thing that they're peddling. Anyway, Elvis to me is a portal to all of those parts of us. And, I'll never apologize for loving Elvis. It was a great ride, Joe, and I appreciate you for instigating it.
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought up the Great American Songbook, because he really, if you think about it, he was a song interpreter. He had a hand in writing one song, wrote some lyrics. It's on the mix. It's really, I don't remember which one, but I could tell you later. But one song, but he sang so many. And in the movie, that was great, because you saw that, like, if there's a new song he dug, he'd sing it. He sang hundreds of songs. He'd sing at parties with friends, playing around the piano late into the wee hours. I really think, he's sort of a sort of generational step from Sinatra, who did Sinatra was just interpreting other songs. That was his art. Like how Sinatra connected with a song and how he brought it to the world. They had unique ways of doing it, and they could do that with anything. Sinatra too is recording Beatles songs, and he did them well. So, yeah.
You bring up a good point, Joe, that he did cover a lot of songs in the movie. He didn't play a lot of the hits, and I enjoyed that. I wasn't sure how I would feel going into the movie. I enjoyed that he didn't play the hits, and we got interpretations of songs that I didn't expect from him.
Yeah, they'd rehearse something like the night before at sound check, and then they'd be playing it, because something caught his ear. He was that deep into music himself. He said that's why he moved like he did, like he couldn't control himself, like it was moving his body for him. Rick, are you ready to talk about the King?
My history with Elvis goes back to the origin moment that all of you have mentioned up to this point, and that is, and maybe it's just that way for our generation, our era. We remember when we heard that Elvis had passed. It was a cultural event that had such profound impact. I was in the back seat of the car on Cloud Springs Road, and just past the Georgia-Tennessee border in outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Heard it on the radio, and then of course there was this whole 77 and beyond, this sort of cultural jumping back into the whole legacy and history of Elvis. There's Elvis stuff everywhere. A lot of that was Colonel Tom pushing that merch out again, trying to wring a few more dollars from Elvis. But it was a way to just deepen my fandom. My family listened to Elvis. We had the Burning Love and other hits 8-track that we play on family trips. But my brother and I had our grandfather had given us he worked maintenance for a while at a apartment complex. Somebody had left behind some stuff. One of it was Meet the Beatles, and the other one was the iconic Elvis Presley, the first RCA album. It was our introduction to him. And then I imagine post his death, we listened to a lot of the live albums, Live from Madison Square Garden, Aloha from Hawaii. So like you were talking about with the covers, I was introduced to a lot of these classic songs through Elvis's interpretation, whether it was the Beatles' Something, or Simon & Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water, Proud Mary, all these types of songs. But yeah, there is something that's just singular and electric and charismatic about Elvis. The Luhrmann movie, I can't remember the last time I was more excited to see a film and not disappointed at all. Like everything I was hoping for, I came away with. It was just a phenomenal experience, and I think he did a great job of capturing the electricity of Elvis. He's it's very interesting, and I was I'll throw this out for y'all to react to if you want. But I had mentioned to a couple of friends after seeing that film that it made me think that this is that Elvis sort of exuded the danger of gospel once it's freed from the purity culture of the church. That there's this. I had not realized. Of course, my grandparents had the album. My parents had the album, but the heavens, I'm blanking on it here. That's
Is that How Great Thou Art?
How Great Thou Art. Thank you.
He did a lot. That was the big one.
Yes, and that was the beginning of the comeback. 1967, he convinces RCA to let him do a second gospel album. That album pushes him back into the top 10 on the pop charts, in country, his only Grammy comes from that album. But I think there was something that reconnected him to the soul of his music. He takes that into the '68 special, and then the Lorman film of the '69 Vegas residency and on. He had rediscovered who he was, and it's anyway. I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop there and turn it over to Mark, and then maybe jump back in a little later.
Well, I first off want to thank you, Joe. I tell you what, I feel like I have just been living in Graceland for the last few weeks. I have listened to so much Elvis. I did go see the movie. I loved every second of it. I had gone to see the later showing. If I had gone to see an earlier one, I probably would have stayed to watch it a second time. I loved seeing, I think when we talk about Elvis, there's Elvis the man, which you don't get to see that often. There's, and then there's Elvis the icon. And I loved in the movie that we saw the man and the musician, and less of the icon. That we just saw what a musician he was, and his musicality and the thoughts, and that he went to Vegas with a real vision, and the way that he interacted with the other musicians. It did remind me a little bit. I mean, I think you're right. That I think everybody owes a debt to Elvis. Like watching him interact with the musicians reminded me of watching Springsteen interact with musicians on stage. He's such a band leader, and Elvis was such a band leader. And I just love that we got to see that, and we saw it in rehearsal, and we saw it in performance, and it was just so exciting and inspiring, and I really loved it. His music, I too also had. I was in Colorado when I heard Elvis had died. I think I was maybe 14, and my parents went to England and they shipped me off to Colorado. So I think I was hiking a mountain or something, and we all of a sudden heard Elvis had died. But I was familiar with his music. I had an aunt who loved Elvis, and so I would go to visit, and Elvis was playing in the house. So I was familiar with his music. I've always seemed to have friends who loved Elvis in the same way that I did, so that it was, I never feel like there was a stretch of time when I didn't listen to Elvis. I was trying to remember. I think it's Quentin Tarantino that says you're either an Elvis man, or a Beatles man, and I never thought that was true because I love them both. And I know somebody else said, if you're an Elvis man, then you can also be a Rolling Stones man. But if you're a Beatles man, you can. I don't know that I agree with that either. So I don't know. I feel like it was Tarantino, but who knows? A couple of things that I wrote down was I love in his music the fine line between cool and camp. Because some of his music is camp, but it's beautiful camp. Like camp is not a bad thing. I think sometimes camp is dismissed that way. And I was thinking about songs that really stand out for me. You Were Always on My Mind is the single saddest love song I have ever heard. I've listened to it so many times over the last couple of weeks, and the confession in that is so beautiful and sad. And and another thing about Elvis too that really strikes me is that voice. I mean, just nobody had that voice. I mean, and what I loved about his voice was how effective it was, no matter what he was singing, that he just could manipulate it and work it in a way. And it was neat sometimes in the movie when you would see he was tired or his voice was a little tired and he might be struggling a little bit. I love those human aspects of him. Some of the things that stood out, Too Much is just such an amazing rockabilly blast. I mean, how can you not love Jailhouse Rock? I wanted to tell Gus too, and I haven't said this to him because it'll probably annoy him. But we talk about musicians. I mean, obviously there is some Elvis inspiration in Springsteen's swagger or Bono's swagger. But I look at all rap music, and it's all. I mean, they hang out with their guys. You see Elvis hanging out with his guys. I mean, there is such a sense of that community of musicians, which reminds me. I mean, those when they were all sitting around together, I thought, well, I've seen this in documentaries about rap groups where they're sitting there with their posse, and so there is that sense of that as well. That kind of owing a debt. One of the songs I really wanted to mention too is Blue Christmas. Like we always have songs, like there are songs for me that if I don't hear them, it doesn't feel like Christmas. If I don't hear Peanuts, the Charlie Brown Christmas, it doesn't feel like Christmas. If I don't hear Blue Christmas, it doesn't feel like Christmas. It's one of my all-time favorite Christmas songs. And I love his, Christmas albums. Because I just listening to him sing that is just so powerful to me. I had to mention too, one thing we haven't talked about is Elvis. I will tell you, I tried to watch. I've seen most of his movies on and off over the years, and I have stayed at there's a resort hotel right next to Graceland. And like two or 3 years ago, my wife just decided for fun. I mean, we've been to Graceland a number of times, but we stayed at the resort next to Graceland. And her idea was it'll be so relaxing because we're not going to Graceland. All the people who stay there go to Graceland. We're just going to hang out in the hotel. Well, if you've never been there, they play Elvis on the television 24/7. They play music 24/7 in the hallways, all Elvis. They do a thing in the early evening. You can go down and they will make you peanut butter and banana sandwiches with a glass of milk. And it's such an incredibly cool, campy experience that I absolutely loved it. But I saw at least, probably 6 or 7 movies because they're streaming all the time in the hotel rooms. So it's really fun. But I was thinking about all the actors who have played Elvis, and a couple I wanted to mention that stand out to me. If you've never seen Bruce Campbell as Elvis in Bubba Hotep, it is a low-budget horror film with the premise that Elvis never died. That he sort of had retirement forced on him, and now he's living in a retirement home, and he hangs out with the actor Ossie Davis, who claims to be John F. Kennedy, and who was turned into he claims I was John F. Kennedy, but I was turned into a black man. And he and Elvis hang out, and the ghost of a mummy, Bubba Hotep, starts killing off people at the old people's home. And so Elvis and JFK team up to fight Bubba Hotep. If you've never seen it, it is awesome. And Bruce Campbell is an amazing Elvis.
Mark, I actually own that on DVD. I haven't watched it yet, but I heard about it and I need to see it. So
I think you will love it.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorites. I have shown it to people over the years because you say Bubba Hotep. I've never heard of that. It is fantastic. I mean, not only is he good, but Ossie Davis literally plays just, I'm JFK. I know I don't look like JFK. I mean, it's a really funny film. I also love Val Kilmer as the spirit of Elvis in True Romance. He appears. You never see him directly, but he appears in the mirror as kind of a spirit guide for Clarence, the main character, the Christian Slater character. He's fantastic. Jack White was a great Elvis in Walk Hard. Michael Shannon is a great Elvis in the movie Elvis and Nixon. that just focuses on Elvis deciding he wants to, be a police officer and work for the government. Nick Cage isn't Elvis, but he is Elvis and Wild at Heart. He's kind of playing Elvis, and he does a beautiful version of one of Elvis's songs. If you've never seen, it's not a good movie, The Honeymoon in Vegas. It was a bad Nick Cage, Sarah Jessica Parker movie, but the Flying Elvi are in that. It's literally a group of Elvis impersonators who jump out of airplanes. But as I wrote here in my notes, nobody plays Elvis better than Elvis. And I did watch one of his movies. The other night, I had never seen his Western. I can't think of the name of it, but he did a Western.
Maybe.
Thank you. It's not very good,
No.
but it's only an hour and 20 minutes. So it's not bad for an hour and 20 minutes.
So,
They didn't try to squeeze a 2-hour film out of it. And Elvis isn't bad in it. It's just not a very good movie. But it is kind of fun. There's a couple of TV actors who were in it with him that I thought were really great.
what about Austin Butler? What do you think about him?
Yeah, I liked Austin Butler. I thought it was fun. I didn't like it later when they put him in the makeup and the fat suit and stuff like that. I thought that didn't really work. But when he was young, I liked him. He's fine. Kurt Russell was probably the first person I ever saw play Elvis. He did it in a TV movie.
Right.
And he was very good. I did watch the movie that Jacob Elordi plays Elvis in the movie Priscilla. I think it was Elordi. He's too tall. He's like 6'7". That's kind of a tall Elvis. But he's not bad. I tell you what, Michael Shannon, if you've never seen Elvis and Nixon, Michael Shannon plays Elvis, and what's his name? Kevin, he's been canceled, but
Spacey.
Spacey?
Kevin Spacey plays Nixon. He is a great Nixon.
Well, I love me some Michael Shannon.
Well, you got to see him play Elvis. He's really good.
I want to see him play Michael Stipe on tour.
Man, I know. I'd love to see that too. I'd love to see that too. But
Spike showed up at the Brooklyn Bowl to sing a number of songs, which I find completely weird. Like they wouldn't show up for Dead Letter Office, right?
I had two other things I wanted to say real quick. I love the quote from Elvis that made me very sad. But when he says, "I get lonesome in the middle of a crowd," and he tells that to the crowd, "I get lonesome in the middle of a crowd." I thought that was really, really, really heartfelt. On the album for Epic, which is really good, the movie album, the performance of Poke Salad Annie just rocks my world. It's so good. I love that song anyway. I think maybe that's the best version I've ever heard of Poke Salad Annie. It's so much fun. I don't know if you watch the show Paradise on Hulu. The entire first 3 episodes of the second season take place in Graceland.
Oh,
It is part of the story for Paradise, the second season of Paradise.
interesting.
And however they rebuild it and everything. I mean, they're literally in the jungle room. Large chunks of it take place in the jungle room, after this awful thing. And my final thing I wanted to say, I'm sure you've heard it, but my absolute favorite song that references Elvis is Richard Thompson's From Galway to Graceland. It makes me cry every time I hear it. It is maybe my favorite. I mean, there's so many Richard Thompson songs I love more than anything in the whole world. The first time I heard that song, it made me weep, and it always makes me weep. It is, I think, one of the most beautiful songs ever written that centers around an obsessive love for Elvis. Boom. But thank you again, Joe. Man, this has been such a treat.
Yeah, I wish the youngsters were here, but I kind of thought they'd
When you talk about songs like kind of about Elvis or referencing Elvis, of course, there's the Paul Simon, but I really, really like the Gillian Welch song called the Elvis Presley Blues that came out in 2001. I was thinking last night about Elvis, day that he died. I was thinking last night about Elvis, that night about Elvis, day that he died. It's a really, 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 really beautiful song called the Elvis Presley Blues.
Oh, I'll listen to that. I do love the Dire Straits calling Elvis. That one was fun. And I love that, calling Elvis, anybody home? That's a great song.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and just stink up the joint. Elvis is everywhere.
No, that's not stinking up the joint. That's as sincere as Elvis is.
No, I love it.
Even
Mojo would say stinking up the joint because he's so self-effacing.
Yes, yeah.
But Elvis is everywhere. So
no, it's true. That's the thing about it. Like it was funny at the time, but now it's like shit.
I think he was wrong about Michael J. Fox. I think Michael J. Fox has some Elvis in him.
Yeah, he got in there late though.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
No, he's it's maybe it's like Don his Bring Me the Head of Don Henley Mojo song there, where Don Henley actually dug it that he was made a target and jumped up on stage to sing it with him at one point. What's better than somebody hates you so much that they write a fun song about it. He probably actually didn't hate him either. He just
right,
low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any stuff that they're listening to lately that they're digging that they want to share?
I've been listening to a lot of stuff. Why don't you start, Scott?
Well, Singing to an Empty Chair, the Rat Boys. They're awesome. Some of these songs just have great hooks and earworms. I'll find myself singing some of these out loud to myself. They're from Chicago by way of Notre Dame. Highly recommended if you like Waxahachie. Some of these songs are a little bit long, but they're great because they just take their good sweet time to unfurl. And I've only listened to it 3 times. I'm looking forward to spending more time with it because it's just that good.
They are playing at the Green River Festival. That's going to be my first festival.
Oh, nice.
That Saturday, I'm going to one day. Going to meet Teacher on the Radio up in Western Ma.
Yeah, Scott, I just grabbed a ticket for Rat Boys in like 3 days from now at the Basement East with the Flory opening up. I'm so excited.
I've seen Flory a couple of times. They're good. I saw them once with Kurt Vile, and then I saw them once at a Hopscotch Day Party. And the time that they were opening for Kurt Vile, they had Zandy Chelmus from Wednesday filling in for their regular pedal steel guy.
All right.
So top of my current listening list is the new Mumford & Sons and the new U2, and those have been just trading out a lot. There's also a new Bandcamp album released by Adeem, the artist, and Adeem seems to have bounced back from their mental health struggles. They're on tour, and I booked them in Cookeville. I've been begging ever since I met Adeem to come do a show in Cookeville, and I booked it. It's 2 weeks from tonight. I'm super excited about it. Mark, you have to come. It's going to be so good.
Oh, I'll be there. It's on my schedule.
One Eye Jack is opening, and they're a rockabilly band from Sparta with a kid that used to go to my church. And when they went to my church, they were Jenna. They transitioned after high school. They're Jack now, and they're amazing. And Colin Cutler has an album of all the songs are based on Flannery O'Connor short stories, and he's the guy that instigated me doing the gig because he's doing a little tour. So there's a bunch of other stuff I've been listening to. Jeremy Ivy's new album is really, really good. But yeah, there's a lot of, it's been just a gangbusters year so far for me. The new Sturgill Simpson, I mean, Giant Blue Skies.
That was fun. That's a fun record. I can't wait to get my grubby little paws on that.
Yeah, he took it off YouTube. So I ordered a CD. I talked to Grimies because apparently there's a cassette, And I asked, I'm really getting into cassettes right now, and I asked Grimy for the cassette, and they said they'd already sold out of the pre-order for the cassette.
Wow.
I meant to tell you, Andy, speaking of cassettes, I recently stumbled across in the garage, our hideous garage that's, the garage of doom. But I found I have about a dozen mixtapes that I made back in the 80s. They're called, I was such a clever college student. I believe they're all called Top 40 Shit 1, Top 40 Shit 2. But I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I made all of these, and I have a ton of them. I just love doing that.
I've gotten so into. I'm making one right now. Like I own about 7 blank tapes, and I just yesterday I started making one. I've got about 10 minutes left to fill on side B. But yeah, it's Joe owned the mixtape fam. I mean, Joe was the guy that made all the mixtapes and passed them around. His mixtapes are legendary. I still have some of yours, Joe.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, I never tire of saying that Joe's tapes were always a treat, and they ruined me for other people who would recommend music. Because
go on.
Yeah.
What do you got, Rick, on new stuff?
I have really been blown away by the Gorillaz' new album, The Mountain. I was telling someone last night, it's like it's like the Beatles, Maharishi Ravi Shankar psychedelia meets the Flaming Lips existential wanderings with a dash of hip hop. They're pondering grief and loss and meaning and God and our cultural malaise. It's a great album.
I'd never heard Gorillaz before. I knew about them. I kind of was fascinated by this whole construct of that it's Damon Albarn, and like what he created, but I never took the plunge. And I saw they were on Saturday Night Live, and I watched the clip of them doing, I think, Clint Eastwood.
Oh, they were fun on SNL.
That was just like, wow, it's like, so I'm gonna pick up. I know Clint Eastwood's an older song, or I think so.
Oh yeah.
But I think I'll pick up that new record just because it's the closest thing I come to buying something that I don't really know about. So it's a big deal because I'm just going back to my sweet spots in the past when I buy vinyl. Anyway, it's cool to just be like, get your jaw dropped for you.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been listening to mostly old stuff. Elvis. I mean, I have been listening to a lot of Elvis, which I have loved. I've been listening to a lot of Steely Dan. I've been listening to Pink Floyd. I've been listening to Bowie. Actually, my wife and I are going next week to Nashville to see. It's a ballet performance, but it is all choreographed to the music of Bowie. Which I'm really excited to go and see.
Is that at the Symphony?
I think it's at TPAC.
Oh, TPAC. Okay.
I don't know. Jennifer bought tickets. She bought tickets and said, "What are you doing Friday?" And I'm like, "I don't know, hanging out with you." And she's like, "Good, because we're going to Nashville." But I'm excited to see it because Gus and I saw the Black Star Symphony a couple years ago at Schermerhorn, and it was amazing. I can't get enough of Bowie music. I've been listening to a lot of Grateful Dead. I mean, I guess because Bobby Weird passed away, and so it just kind of threw me back into it. And but I'm excited to listen to the new Gorillaz. Gus introduced me to an artist named Baby Keem, who I was not familiar with, a rapper, and I loved what I've listened to so far. He's got a new album out that Gus reviewed for the campus paper. So I'm looking forward to start listening to some new stuff as well, instead of just listening to all the stuff that touches my heart.
Well, we're at an hour. I have your assignment for next month if you guys will stay on the call.
Absolutely.
Joe, thank you so much for taking us to Graceland
My
and
pleasure.
for leaning into the topic so hard. I mean, Amy gave me her regrets, but she said basically I don't have anything to say about Elvis that'll be worth you guys. But hopefully she'll give us a listen. And I love the movie. I'm so glad I got to go with Jeannie. I'm sorry I missed the IMAX. Rick, was there anything special about it being an IMAX in particular?
I mean, it's
Wow.
just it's larger than life, as Elvis was, and the sound is incredible.
Yeah.
I saw A Complete Unknown in IMAX, and there wasn't really anything IMAXy about A Complete Unknown, but it was so immersive. It was just so good.
Yeah.
Well, gang. Country Joe and the Fish. Country Joe died of Country Joe and the Fish. Country Joe
So
McDonald
did
passed away.
Augie Myers.
Augie Myers from Texas Tornadoes and Doug Sam. Classic.
If we look at all the people that are still alive, we've got some really sad ones coming down the lane in the next few years, dudes. All right. Next month, a date to be announced, a topic to be announced in a second offline, and come back, and we'll post always on our Facebooks. We are the Music Nerds, and thank you for coming to our ElvisCast. See you next month.
Have fun storming the
Yeah.
castle.